Well, I ran out of time on part one, but it's actually quite simple. Okay? Um, I couldn't live with that. Okay? In my mind, I couldn't live with the fact in knowing that by allowing them to pump those chemicals that end up in the drinking water system, the risk of exposure that represents to that many millions of people who will be consuming that water, I know what the result of that is going to be. And that result is not acceptable to me. And why is it not acceptable to me? Because love is a law on this planet. Okay? That's what it means to be a First Law Nation Indian. That's why they're known as a First Law Nation, because First Law represents first light, which is first star. Which means at the inception of consciousness, the first unit of awareness that has the ability to manifest and thus experience what it creates. When it creates what it has the ability to experience, to manifest in it with that much light because it has that much love, that is that powerful in spirit to be able to do that. That's a powerful magnet. Because that powerful magnet is attracting so much light at such a high rate of speed that the core is hot. And now that star can shine brightly and provide high frequency energy that will allow other planets and galaxies to be able to thrive. Because the other units of consciousness that are in those realms will be able to experience the higher frequency, the higher speed waves that exist within that light that we can experience as a result of the relationship that we have between dark energy and light energy. Maintaining peace, harmony, and balance within our own state of consciousness. So if you don't have any compassion and you don't have empathy for other beings, in which when I give you the evidence and show you the facts, you can't avoid knowing what the ultimate result is going to be of the exposure that's going to take place by those that are drinking that water in the future. For me to realize that I was surrounded by beings that found that acceptable, because what they weighed that against was their own self-serving interest that was translated through the money that they received by the corporation that was committing a crime against humanity. How many employees do you think working at that plant? Because at day shift, because I was there during the height of when they were building the space shuttle, and as I remember, if my numbers are somewhat correct, there was 35,000 people that worked day shift, there was 19,000 people that worked second shift, and there was 12,000 people that worked third shift. That's a small city. How many of those beings do you believe would be willing to give up a job, okay, making 20, 25, or 30 bucks an hour, okay, in order to protect the future lives and the children of the future so that they're not exposed to the toxic chemicals that were being produced by that one building? and then dumped into the groundwater drinking supply of Southern California. Because one of the things that I did, and I began doing this in childhood, is I started doing calculations about how many millions of American people work for companies and corporations in which, for example, you can go find a piece of shrapnel that you pull out of a 4-year-old child that's got a Made in the USA stamp on it that came out of a factory with 4,000 Americans that worked there. Okay? People that work for the company Monsanto, where they made white phosphorus, dropped it over thousands of Vietnamese children, men and women, and burned them half to death. So I'll tell you some truth. The mass majority of the people that live in the United States of America could not only be arrested, okay, for being insane, if you will, okay, but participating in crimes against humanity and crimes against nature. Because all you have to do is measure the biofeedback across the entire planet on the oxygen percent that we now have, how polluted the air is, how polluted the soil is, how every ecosystem on this planet, every river, every lake, every piece of land is contaminated. You can't find any purity left on the surface of this planet anymore, can you? Where the air is pure, the living water is pure, and the soil is pure. That's why when Kim Jong-un said in the video that they did today, which is the 14th, about how apparently this Red Queen felt that they needed to kill off all of humanity because they didn't deserve living on this planet because it was so beautiful. Because look what they did to it. Now, I remember growing up with an enormous amount of rage in me as a result of knowing that. Okay? Because I could observe how people were essentially addicted. Okay? Well, it's not addicted, it's programming. They're forced to go into a school in which information is deliberately written into their unconscious mind that becomes the future that they experience. Because they realize that the information that's been programmed into their head is to essentially train them to become a resource in which they work for a company or a corporation or another business in the future from which they get a paycheck. Which basically means they become programmed to become a robot. Because they don't think for themselves anymore, because they don't create anything of their own anymore. All of their consciousness energy is used on behalf of what? Rule-based functions. When you sign a contract to get a paycheck to go to work with a company, you don't have any say in what they do. You're an employee. Which means you carry out a job task for them. Your future is dependent on their ability to make money. And their ability to make money is based on how much and how fast they can compete and pillage and plunder all of the resources that they have available to them, to which they can extract it, in which they find you useful to keep around as an employee, to which they're making all that money so that the top of the pindar that's running that corporation can enjoy and reap the benefits of what everybody else below them, which is your pyramid, is providing for them, which means you're an energy slave. Because the one thing that I couldn't figure out as a child is I thought, even if they just studied their own history going back 150 years, they would realize that the very financial system in which their consciousness is plugged into is completely corrupted. Because I was aware of what both my parents lived through, which was the Great Depression, And you realize that they did it deliberately. Which means when you go to work for a corporation, you got to hope that if you're going to be there over the next 20 years, okay, that they can maintain what it is that they do in order to keep paying you the paycheck that they do. And then what you choose to do with that money is going to be up to you. But if you perceive your future security through the money which is translated to something that is corrupted, then you're depending on something that is a predator for the success or failure of what your life and your future children's lives are going to be represented by. Which means, how could millions of people not know when they go to work for a company or a corporation that they're not engaged in crimes against humanity? How could they not know that? Because they're willing to put that aside because they see their security and their state of well-being dependent on what's external to them rather than their own internal gene drive, which means their soul. They're driven by the information that was written into their unconscious memory from the time they entered the womb and the time that they exited the womb as a newborn, and everything that happened after that was dependent on the information that got recorded into their unconscious memory between the ages of 1 and 6 that we can track into the future as an adult, which is why the ages 1 through 6 are so critical. How much freedom does a 1-year-old to 6 years of age actually have to realize how much power that they actually have by being free to create and imagine and manifest in their own mind that translates into how they share that with others through the love they have in their heart to have the freedom to do that? Instead of other beings that are around them, in which as a small child, all the adult figures in their life are imposing their will on that child, which translates to that child that I don't have any freedom to think and exercise my own free will because what it is that I'm supposed to do is being determined by and imposed on me by something that is external to me. So there is a big difference between what we call extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation when it comes to learning. Which is why, where I come from, we teach and work with children in a circle of light through our heart, which is using the language of light that exists throughout all the light, in which all the love is held, through which we share that knowledge, in which a child can learn the power and the importance and the value of what it means to feel love through your heart and use that energy as the means to raise your vibration by living in love and service to others, to be a powerful magnet upon which we attract more light and we go faster. And it's actually that simple. The heart is the most powerful magnet, which makes it the most powerful vortex, which allows you to be able to experience and spin more data at a higher rate of speed, which allows you to have a higher state of awareness than a programmer. It's what allows you to say, I'm not going to allow that information to be written in my unconscious memory. See ya. I'm not going to read that newspaper. I'm not going to watch that TV. I'm not going to go see that movie. I'm not going to hang out with those people that are trying to impose their will on us. That's a psychopath. That's a tyrant. That's a dominator. They want to dominate your life. You see, they don't know how to let a bird be a bird. They don't know how to let a whale be a whale. They don't know how to let a fox be a fox. They don't know how to let a bear be a bear. They don't know how to let a human be a human. It's always about control. And why is it always about control? Because they don't know how to live in a state of peace. They don't know how to live in harmony. They don't know how to live in balance. It's that simple. That's why the energy field is so distorted. Because the energies are so out of balance. So for us, we've got to find places in which we can heal ourselves, retune our frequencies, and hang out with more powerful energy. Right? To restore ourselves.